music, crafting and carpentry, mountain biking, filming, gaming, editing. These are just a few of the many things that I'm very interested and passionate about, and many of them I consider myself to be pretty good at. So I wanted to make this video to hopefully inspire others with many different interests and passions, maybe you if you're watching this video, to better know how to manage them, avoid burnout, and most importantly, how to progress and get better at each of them. And the biggest thing I wanted to start out with is the fact that it's okay to have many different interests and passions. This is a really important piece, is knowing how to be okay having all of these, despite what other people might tell you. In my younger years, when I was in grade school especially, maybe my classmates, teachers, society even, would tell me or hint at the fact that I had to narrow down and choose one thing to get really good at, and that I wouldn't be successful if I kept doing all sorts of different things and if my mind was scattered and divided among all of my different interests. I was a very passionate and curious kid. I always enjoyed many different things, and I think even the school systems currently are very based around the fact that it's normal to go to college and pick something to get a degree in. Hopefully that thing is maybe what you enjoy doing, what you end up making money with, and becoming successful with. And while that can work well for some people, it doesn't work so well for other people like myself. I have never been able to fit myself into a box or just pick one thing, and had I really believed in myself and been okay with having all of my interests, I would have saved a lot of time that I've spent worrying and trying to narrow down when it just would never work out for me. And so the biggest thing to sort of start out with managing many interests is to just list them out. Recognize all of the interests that you have. Maybe even categorize them based on what you're naturally really good at and what you might want to work more at. And creating a list and something that you can understand of what all of your interests are can already take some of the stress off of doing lots of different things and having your mind scattered in many places all at once. And you could even take it farther by recognizing patterns. You know, maybe you're interested in one of those interests at a certain time of year, and maybe going to certain events will inspire you to get back into something. For example, I just went to a music recording studio to do a tour and talk to some of the audio engineers, and it made me interested and passionate again about picking music back up. So I went home and I was all interested to sort of shift some of my settings around and mess around with that some more. So just sort of recognizing patterns you might have with your interests. Do you cycle back and repeat them? What sort of time do you dedicate toward each of them? And this can take a lot of the stress off and make us much more comfortable with them to be able to work with them farther and take them to the next level. Because when you recognize each of them, it's much easier to categorize them and set a schedule and actually find time to do each of them, which is the next most important piece of having many interests. And honestly, what I suck at the most is setting a schedule for yourself. It is super, super important to set a schedule and more specifically, dedicate time to each of those interests one at a time, because we can't do them all at once. The whole point about getting better at something is to dedicate a good chunk of time to that thing, and to see it through, to challenge yourself to see it through. And as the saying goes, jack of all trades, master of none. You know, that's true to some degree. If you're just kind of good at everything, floating in everything, and you don't take the time to master something or get good at something, well, then you won't improve. And that saying doesn't mean you have to pick one thing and master it. That's the whole point of this video, is that you can get good at many things. But a big piece of doing that is to set a schedule for yourself and dedicate a good chunk of time to each of those things. And it might be really, really hard sometimes. Maybe you start a project and it doesn't go as planned and you feel like giving up, and it's okay. There will be ups and downs. But to be able to dedicate a bunch of time to each of those interests and see the ups and downs and work through it, even if it can be really hard sometimes, because having many different interests and passions raises the temptation to just switch to the next thing as soon as one thing starts getting difficult. which I definitely have noticed myself doing a lot. And that honestly makes it so that I can't really progress and get better at each of those things. I'll just keep switching to the next as soon as the previous one got difficult. And I'll cycle back to it, but that means I'm not really working through the challenges, which is the only way we learn at things. Another big piece of that is failure. With many different interests, it's more likely that you'll have many, many failures. But failure is our biggest teacher and our biggest friend, and learning how to work through it and see it through is a really good thing. But you also don't want to get burnt out on your interests. You don't want to push yourself so hard to see something through that you end up just destroying yourself and destroying the interest and getting completely burnt out on it, which is why it's also super important to take time for yourself, to take a break if you notice you need a break, maybe go for a walk, go camping for a few days to reset yourself, and then you can either come back to that interest with a new spark and be able to sort of work through the difficulties of it in a new way, or maybe in your time off you realize that it just didn't work out. You have to accept the failure, and it's okay to start over, either with that interest or to move on to another interest if that's what it comes down to. The big piece of this is just challenge yourself to learn. Challenge yourself to push through that a bit, and a schedule can really help with that. And another thing I wanted to talk about related to having many different interests and passions is that boredom is really good. It is your best friend. I think many of us with many different interests and passions, when we get bored, we think something is wrong with us, right? We have so many different things we're interested in. It's like, oh my gosh, there's no way that I have free time. There's so many things that I have to learn, or I have to dedicate all of this time to each of these things to actually get better at them. But boredom is your friend, because that is where new ideas are born, where you can look at things in new ways. And that's a really important piece, is don't feel like you have to fill every bit of time just to try to get better at all those different interests. And there's no doubt that it will take longer to get better at each of those than someone who does pick just one thing for the rest of their lives. I don't think many of us just pick one thing for the rest of our lives, but it will take longer to get better at many different interests rather than spending lots and lots of time at just one. But that's okay, you can still get better. And that leads me to another important piece, which is track your progress. It might be months, it might be a year, weeks, I don't know, until you come back to that interest again as you cycle through your different interests. And it's important to sort of create a log for yourself of where did you leave off? What did you learn the last time that you were interested in that thing? You know, maybe the last time I was doing music, I wrote a few songs and I learned some new techniques about recording them. And so maybe I could write those down to try to remember them for myself the next time I come back to it, so that I can actually see my progress. Because having many different things, it can be really easy to get down on ourselves, feeling like we're not seeing progress because our attention is divided between so many different things. So it's very, very, very important to track progress and realize that you have to have patience, and that you only get good at something by learning from it and repeating it many times. So it may take a long time to start seeing progress with some of these things. And it's okay to quit some of them. If you feel like you're just not seeing progress, maybe you see it through. This can also actually be really helpful to you to sort of determine, maybe I thought I liked something, but I gave it a bunch of time and now I don't like something. It's okay if these interests do change out. Maybe you replace one with another that you end up liking more and you want to give it a shot. But it can also be really overwhelming if you don't give each one adequate time, because then you don't really know which ones you really like and what you don't like. And that can actually be something that, especially for me, I get afraid to put a lot of time into each interest, because some of them I'm afraid that, oh, if I put a bunch of time in, I might realize that I don't like this interest, which is interesting. Yeah, if you put a bunch of time into something, you may end up finding that you don't like that, even though your brain might think, I really think I like this. I think I'm really passionate about it. And that could actually be the thing holding you back from putting a bunch of time into that interest, because sometimes we find out that we aren't passionate about it after all. So it's okay to switch. It's okay to change. And the biggest part is just have patience with yourself. Be okay with having all of those interests. And that kind of leads me on to the future of this channel a little bit. I haven't posted in a while, and part of that is definitely because I'm interested in so many different things. And to this day, I am still working on everything I'm telling you in this video. I'm still working on scheduling. I'm still working on how can I fit all these interests in. And it's also okay to be able to say, oh, some of these interests I might decide to share on YouTube, but some of them I might not. I think that can also stress us out, is if we feel like we have to bring all of our interests everywhere. It's okay that maybe you make money only with one or two of those interests, but not with the rest. That's the case for me. I only make money with the carpentry, crafting part of my interests, but I don't make money with the rest. And, I might only want to share a few of them on YouTube, but not the other ones. And so that's kind of what I myself have been wrestling with lately, is how could I sort of do this channel to bring many of my interests and encompass them somehow, but also recognize that I don't have to put everything and completely confuse myself on this channel. So going forward, I do hope to continue being creative in many of my interests, especially my music. I want to get more into some filming and editing on this channel. I've been really into color grading lately and kind of messing around with some of that, as well as crafting projects when they sort of weave themselves in. I'm currently working on redoing my home studio right now with a new desk and everything, so definitely be on the lookout for videos about that, for example. Might do some more mountain biking and things, so if any of that interests you, then do be sure to subscribe. I hope you liked this video, so hit that like button if you did. And with that said, I'll see you in the next one.